Good morning and welcome to the new episode of Frontiers of Knowledge. Bermuda Triangle has been exciting the imagination of the people for a long time. With the various names, Hudaspa, Devil's Triangle, Limbo of the Lost, this 700,000 square kilometer area in the ocean has been presumed to be a disaster for the airplanes and for the ships. This was a place where the aircraft would just disappear and the ships would disappear. This area between Bermuda, Florida, and Puerto Rico, the triangle formed by this, was popularly assumed to be the burial space, and either the aliens were creating a problem or the fire crystals from the lost city of Atlantis would come and destroy these aircraft. And it was so much so that the thing started way back with the loss of Flight 19. 5 Navy Avenger torpedo bombers took off from Fort Lauderdale for a 2-hour flight. It was December 5th, 1945, about 3 years after I was born. And the aircraft was lost. No trace was found of aircraft or of 14 members of the crew. But what was more spooky was that a Marines seaplane was dispatched to rescue them. And that also disappeared along with the 13 crew. So 27 people were lost. That was the beginning. And then it became a mystery. And a writer, Vincent Gaddis, wrote an article, Deadly Bermuda Triangle. And he wrote, whatever the menace that lurks within that triangle is a tragedy and is responsible for the incredible mystery in the history of aviation. And this continued. Films were made, novels were written, and then we found that this was somehow or the other pandering to the baser thoughts of the people, are the thoughts of the people that seek refuge in the supernatural. But then comes one scientist, and the scientist Carl Kuczewski says, there's no mystery at all. Imagine it. What has been mystery for the last 70 years seems to be no mystery. And what happens is that there is no deadly Bermuda Triangle. He says that the aircraft vanished in an ideal conditions, ideal for disaster. It wasn't a fine weather. The waves that were there in the ocean at that time were 15 meters high, 49 feet high, and accepted that the airman was a capable leader, Lieutenant Charles Taylor, but human error can be there. And he was known to be a drunk. He had arrived for the aircraft with a hangover. He didn't have a watch. And there was a history of this guy of getting lost. Twice earlier, he had ditched his aeroplane. Not only that, the radio transcripts before the petrol vanished made it clear that Flight 19 was not sure of its position. As a matter of fact, the transcripts show that his compass was malfunctioning, was not functioning properly. And at that time, he was above the Florida Keys. Florida Keys are a string of islands stretching to the southwest of US mainland. But the analysis shows that he was wrong. He was somewhere near Bahamas. Then the junior pilot told him that they should turn west, but he insisted on turning east, taking him further down the Atlantic. So, it was an absolute human error. Then, the second follow-up plane, there have been witnesses to an explosion, and oil slick and debris were found after the disaster, and US Navy grounded all other seaplanes because they were defective. They were flying gas tanks. It remains to be seen whether the mystery is really mystified. Now let's go to the statistics. The biggest insurer of the ships is Lloyd's. And the Lloyd's of London says that in case we compare the number of disappearances in Bermuda Triangle, they are the same which happens in other parts of oceans, whether it's Pacific or Atlantic or Indian or whatever. So the Charles Bull's book, The Bermuda Triangle, sold 20 million copies because it reads more like a thriller. And the fictional film Close Encounters of the Third Kind, where Flight 19 is supposed to be kidnapped by aliens. Notwithstanding, the number of accidents and the ships and the aircraft disappearing is no different in Bermuda than the other parts of the world. In 1997, Lloyd's spokesman agreed with it. Earlier it was in 1974, 75, and now in 97. That is 22 years after the first one. There are as many losses in other expenses of ocean as in Bermuda, and they are no higher than any other routine journey. Now, these two statements by Lloyd's, the biggest insurer, show that all this talk of some alien coming up and grabbing the ships, or some monster coming down from the deep down, some Lechnos, gobbling up the ships that the no trace is left behind, is not acceptable, cannot be acceptable. And then, Lloyd's London still has not changed. Now, as a matter of fact, historically, the insurance companies would be very happy to blame it on an other outside agency because acts of God are not covered by insurance. Now, why is it happen? Let's see the geographical condition. It's a triangle situated more or less in the middle of Atlantic Ocean. And here there was once the mythical city, Atlantis, right there. So the time hope is there. People have an absurd notion that that Atlantis city, the city of the gold, is somehow or the other creating a black hole in which the ships and the aircraft sink. You see, when Atlantis was destroyed, it sank to the very bottom of the ocean. The ruined temple are even now there, the remnants, but underwater creatures live there. However, the rumors are that the fire crystals come from that place with tremendous power and energy. And they're still bringing in energy. What's the reality? The reality is the methane gas, which is encapsulated in the ice, when it melts, comes up. Let's not forget that this area has a lot of methane. a mixture of 5 to 15% methane can explode like an airplane engine exhaust. One geological survey of USA has revealed that the gas hydrate power can sink ships. So scientifically, if we see, it is just a gas hydrate blowout and not an eccentric, I was going to say it, but I wouldn't call it eccentric, but supernatural claim, because eccentric would be too harsh a word. The only problem is that the naturally occurring hydrate gas blowout occurred 15,000 years back, but it can happen again. So it is basically the melting of the ice which releases methane, which can be responsible. That's again a theory. There is no proof. So we find that many a times ordinary incidents are wrapped up, what Mr. Churchill will say, a mystery in an enigma. You cannot explain a thing, so say supernatural aliens are coming. And just today morning, I received a message from NASA that they need people, at least 2 people, planet protection officers who will protect the planet from aliens. Now imagine if NASA is pandering to this stage and they want to appoint 2 people, they wanted my suggestions. I have written to them and told them on the phone as well that there's no harm in appointing people because it gives employment to the people. Okay. But it's not required. You want to appoint 2 people. Can 2 people, if the aliens are so strong and so capable, can 2 people only protect them? They cannot. You have to create a complete force then. Let's raise up a force. Anti-alien commando force. That may be possible. But definitely, Bermuda Triangle was an interesting thing that the ships have just disappeared. But then, if you remember, last M370, the Malaysian airline was lost all contact. And after 2 years, some debris were found. And now, 75 years after the first incident, science and technology advanced much further. At that time, debris could not be found because they did not have those tools which we have today. So Bermuda Triangle is basically explosive release of methane gas trapped in methane hydrate inside icy cage of water molecules deep down the ocean. It is hot and it's cold. Either it's boiling hot or it's freezing cold. So when the methane comes up, it comes with a flash. So that possibility is there. But that definitely does not mean that it is anything but aliens coming and kidnapping, that it is anything but a hellhole in the oceans which gobbles up our ships, attracts our aircraft like the siren, attracting ships in the Ulysses. If you have read the Greek epic Ulysses, you'll find there was a siren who would attract ships by looking at the beautiful women and then gobble them up. So there's no siren here. Let's be sure. Yes, the imagination of the writers and the film producers created a web of mystery far removed from reality and facts of life. Reality is accidents take place. They take place in Bermuda, they take place in Timbuktu. They can take place anywhere. And as Lloyd says, the number of the accidents and the disappearances in this part of the world is no higher than the similar incidents anywhere else in the world. So let's not unnecessarily lose our cool and sleep on this issue. Let's take it with a grain of salt and accept it as ordinary accident. Bermuda Triangle mystery is no longer a mystery. It is just a phenomena which happens, can happen anywhere. That's the way it is. Thank you.